Hi everyone, welcome to Electricity Canada's Conversation Series. My name is Diana Dominique. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Solutions and Sustainability here at Electricity Canada. And thank you for joining our webinar today. Before we get started, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we are on. It's the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and we are grateful to have this opportunity to be present here today. Electricity Canada's Conversation Series features thought leaders from our corporate partners and highlights Canadian and international solutions to current and future industry challenges. In working with our corporate partners, these webinars have been developed to offer solutions to our most pressing issues that we are facing today. Everything from generation right through to the customer and behind the meter as well. So today, feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can add your questions into the chat, and we will send a brief survey after this webinar series, after this webinar today. So I would like to introduce Jamie Kaplan, who's a Regional VP of O-Power at Oracle, and Natalie Snyder, who's Director of Design and Content, and they'll discuss accelerating electrification and scaling demand flexibility through customer action. So Jamie and Natalie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, thanks for all of you joining. I'm Jamie Kaplan. I'm with Oracle Energy and Water. I'm Regional Manager of our Canada region, and been about 20 years in the utility industry, and most recently, last few years, been focused on the customer to grid applications and domain. And joining as well as Natalie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Jamie. Natalie Snyder. I'm Director of Design and Content for O-Power. So my team is responsible for creating in-product content as well as custom content for utilities using the O-Power platform.
Great. So today, we would like to have a quick agenda. One, we want to talk about reaching scale to all customers who are needed to be engaged in this energy transition. And Natalie will also cover some of our user design thinking and a section we call putting customers first. And then we'll have some time for a Q&A. Just a quick note about Oracle Energy Water. Sometimes it's helpful. You know, we're a big company, and a lot of times it's best to have others describe what we do. So Guidehouse describes us as the market leader in 3 specific areas that are quite frankly converging. One is in customer engagement and experience analytics. The other category is smart meter analytics, and the third being artificial intelligence for DER integration. And quick plug for that last one, for around DERs. Please join my colleague not too long from now on September 28th. Brad Williams will be talking about that aspect of what we do. But today, we're just going to focus focusing on the first 2 items, which is customer engagement experience analytics and smart meter analytics. And this is all in the domain of customer to grid or customer-centric grid operations. So the the concept being these are 2 typical traditional silos within our industry, the grid side and the customer side, and obviously that's converging. And but more than just converging, there's a virtuous cycle of engagement and operational efficiency and benefits through the grid side that you see through what's converging today. So be able to analyze the network, state of the network, balance demand with resources, again, going back out to your customers and learning more about what they're doing being engaged as they purchase DERs or adopt different technologies, offer advice, enroll them, feed that back into the models. Again, use that new resource to balance supply and demand. What's the next best action customers take, and so on and so forth. So just this virtuous cycle between the customer and the grid. So that's the focus area of our organization and the topic of today. What are the challenges you see here in this space today, especially with the energy transition, is around customer engagement. And it's very easy to engage the prosumer, but how do you engage customers at scale? The transition is going to require scale. We can't get there with prosumers alone or with only one segment of the customers. And so what is it that we can do? What are the technologies we can use? What are the type of thought processes, business processes, principles we can follow in order to get at scale? The other aspect of this here is what we call the truth and a lie. And I mentioned prosumers a bit, and but the truth one here is utilities need to have the customers take action more so than ever to meet the targets that have been set and to meet the transition challenges and the incredible diverseness of those challenges. Truth two is utility customers are requiring more from their providers, more so than ever. And the lie, which I alluded to earlier, is that we're going to get there with prosumers only. So, in summary, we do need customers to take action. As utilities, we need to provide exceptional services, and we need to serve everyone. Let's take a minute to talk about what isn't working in this industry so far. I have some personal experience here I thought I would share. So one common thing is, well, let's build out incentives. Let's use price signals to help us accelerate the market, to help us transition faster. And I love to pick on the carbon tax here a little bit. Just recently there was a survey done about the perception of whether or not the carbon tax in Canada is effective for accelerating change. Is it an effective strategy? And in 2019, Nanos found 16% of Canadians believed carbon taxes were effective at reducing fuel consumption. And today, in 2023, it's only 9%. Facts aside, I'm not going to get into the facts of whether or not it has been or has not been impactful. The fact is that perception of it has not been going in the right direction, going from 16% to 9%. Another interesting example is around time of use pricing. And what we're seeing right now in terms of opt-in or opt-out time of use, and recently involved in with one utility who is rolling out an opt-out time of use rate, a default time of use rate. And while the facts show that 90% of customers without any behavior change will actually come out ahead in that, and 10% of customers can be identified and managed separately, the complaints are actually coming from the 90% that are going to come out ahead. And it goes to show that, perception is often reality. And so it's important to, and we'll get into this, understand, what the data tells you, and then how actual customers behave and how they perceive that data. Just a quick, just back to the carbon tax piece, I want to give a shout out to Fair Path Forward. They have an awesome calculator online that can show an individual consumer the benefits of the carbon tax in terms of the rebate amounts that they're going to receive. So my personal example here, living in Calgary, is that by 2030, I'm going to be receiving almost $28,000 in rebates in the incentive, which is an amazing number. And as a prosumer myself, this is actually a pretty motivating factor. But I'm also a prosumer, and I understand that I probably have similar costs. So it's really a matter of, how can I come ahead in this calculation? So they've done a great job, I think, quantifying for consumers what is the benefit. I would love to get in touch with these guys because I think there's some other things they could do in terms of showing everyone how they could benefit as in context of also what their costs are going to be. So anyway, just wanted to provide a shout out here to Fair Path Forward, who have done a wonderful job so far on this aspect of it. But it goes to show that even though that there's a benefit to me and a benefit to everyone on certain pricing mechanisms, that perception is reality. And actually, this was a quote from a recent hearing at a utility commission talking about price signals and time of use pricing. And again, even though that most people would come out ahead, unfortunately, in politics and in everyday life, not just politics, perception is reality. So the way that we've been thinking about this problem is really, threefold. Addressing this issue of the disparity between what the data tells you versus how customers perceive it, and then how to do that at scale. There's three areas that we believe have been pretty powerful and proven out over time here. So one is leveraging artificial intelligence, right? Deep learning models and machine learning to reach scale, because that's use the power of the compute to do things that normally you couldn't do. But combine that with behavioral science and user-centered design. So it's one thing to have a lot of data. It's another thing to present that data to customers. And you want to present it to customers using some proven techniques and really look at how people actually behave and how they actually perceive information versus what you would like them to perceive or hope that they perceive. So a good example of AI in this industry right now is appliance detection and disaggregation. This is becoming quite common. There's many different providers of this technology, and there's many different models that work off of monthly data or hourly or 15-minute interval data, and there's even some new technologies that have some real-time capabilities. And the accuracy has been pretty good. These models have been finely tuned, and there's been a lot of positive feedback loops created in terms of validating these models against real-world scenarios. And you can see on the right that actually, even for 15-minute interval data, which is the right-hand side here, pretty good accuracy for detecting what appliances are behind the meter. So now that we have all of this data, what can you do with it? And the really interesting thing is, what do you do with data that is 100% accurate versus data that is 97% accurate or 99% accurate? And as I mentioned before, even if you're 100% accurate on the math, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be perceived that way. And so really, leveraging, these new data points, these new insights, really becomes a question of how. So one common application right now you see a lot of is alerts, right? So this is sort of a no regrets move, send out alerts to customers for unusual usage, for example, or high usage alerts. Pretty non-controversial type of applications, and you see a lot of those out there today. The other sort of non-controversial aspect of using this type of AI is to enable utility-facing applications, right? So not customer-facing, but utility-facing applications where, for example, identifying your level 1 and level 2 charging in your network, which customers have this charging in place so that you can better manage your distribution, find clustering, and integrate this into your planning, and leverage this to create specific marketing. Now with AI and these different models, they don't give you necessarily a binary, yes, this is happening, or no, it's not. It's usually a confidence scale, right? A number between 0 and 100 of the level of confidence in which this particular device exists, or this particular load exists in your system. So for high confidence charging, you might want to have one strategy. For low confidence or medium confidence, you might have another. And so again, this is where it's not just about providing raw data. You have to put data in the context that it's in to communicate to customers. So another example here would be, on the customer side, you may know with high confidence, but not perfection, that there is a set of non-EV owners, which is probably most of them, right? But what types of messaging would you do to those who are not yet adopters of EVs? And why would you do this? Well, one, you might actually want to encourage EV adoption. Another reason is so that you want to build some trust with customers when they do eventually become an EV owner, which surveys say that most customers are looking to EVs for their next purchase. Then you will be in a position of trust and can better engage them when that opportunity comes. You also, once you've identified them as an EV owner, a potential EV owner, based on what the AI tells you, you can have messaging that is specific to that scenario, but also just using language and using some behavioral techniques such that it's not maybe totally obvious that that they have an EV, or if they are sort of a medium confidence detected charging data point, that you might want to ask a pre-qualification question first. So you would change your technique and how you would communicate to these customers based on the level of confidence that you have that's coming out from the output of your AI. Of course, once they do enroll, you have a pretty good idea that they are in fact an EV owner, and then your experience can change, right? Now you know for a fact that they do have an EV, and then you can move on to more coaching and reinforcement, helping them with their charging, how it relates to their pricing, maybe their time of use periods, and encouraging them to charge off peak, whether that's a passive managed program or an active managed program. So the point being is that AI provides very high quality data for you to use, but it's not perfect. And you want to kind of leverage the fact that you can segment the customers and leverage behavioral science and some user-centered design, which we'll talk about, to provide great experiences for everybody. So again, this particular slide demonstrates serving all customers, not just those who have already purchased an EV. Another really interesting use case for AI is some deep learning models to determine which customers are eligible for energy assistance programs. And this is a real challenge today, because third-party data that would give you some insight about which customers are vulnerable or which customers are at risk is very much incomplete. When you buy financial data, when you buy census data, when you buy all sorts of data sets, and when you look into the information that you might have in your databases, it's very incomplete, and it only covers a small number of customers. You could also ask customers directly, have them qualify, but only a certain number of customers will engage there. So you get a pretty small slice of customers there as well. Again, there's some census tract data, but it's very macro. not really down to the individual household. So again, limited use. You can market to maybe neighborhoods, but you're really not getting very personal with these communications, and not driving a lot of adoption. But the other thing you can do, of course, is leveraging AI. So AI does take into account all of these different data points: third-party data, direct customer provided information, things like census tract information, meter data, billing data, whatever data that you can get your hands on. And you can build out models that help you cover a good, cover everybody with with this sort of gradient of confidence about their eligibility or their circumstances. So, of course, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be exact ground truth data. It's going to be a little bit fuzzy, but it's much better than any of these other alternatives. The fact that you can, with a level of confidence, understand everything that's happening in a community down to the individual household level is really interesting, and can open up a lot of applications. So one of those applications is messaging to customers, but because again these customers, you might be reaching them up to the first time. They probably were hidden before. The machine learning models had identified them as a potential at a confidence level, and you have a great opportunity to engage with them. And you can leverage some behavioral science here to soften the messaging, to engage them in a way that's respectful, and then takes into account the limitations of the AI as well. So, for example, on the left here, you'll see a communication triggered by being late on their payments. And this particular communication, doesn't anywhere talk about how much is owed or any threatening language or message. It's talking about how it's sometimes hard to afford the energy you need. And in this particular case, decided to offer a discounted rate plan that's personalized for them based on their actual usage and expected projected future. So again, just being cognizant of who you're communicating with and the action you really want them to take, which is to participate in a discounted pricing plan. Another example would be, again, leverage some behavioral science. Maybe these customers have not been necessarily qualified for energy assistance through the analytics, but they're identified as some that are likely to benefit. And so you can then communicate to them in a different way. They're not behind on their bill, but they've been identified as a potential candidate for energy assistance. So you can use behavioral science concept like salience to show in context what last year's winter bills were for them. You can provide them some normative comparison about what energy assistance programs are available and that others in their community are in fact using it. And have a quick call to action here to have them identify how many people live in their home, such that you can direct them to a specific program, which we'll get into next. But what's really interesting about this communication and leveraging behavioral science is, there's a couple of things. So one, you'll notice that in all of these communications is that there's no mention of low income. There's no mention of being vulnerable. There's no language like that. When we did a lot of our research on how to communicate to these customers, that was very clear that identifying them using that type of language is just not it's not that engaging. And in fact, there's a sort of pride aspect that you have to take into consideration. So really like leveraging that, knowing that, and being careful with the language here is really important. The other aspect of it is down at the bottom here, asking the question about how many people live in your home. It's a pretty personal question. And the deep learning models will actually give us that, right? A lot of these models can predict the number of people in your home. And in this case, it's best to ignore that. Ignore the AI. And it's because it's a little too creepy to say that, maybe filled in that 4 people live in the home or 5 people live in the home. It's best in this case to actually just default to 1. So here's like a use case of when to use the output of the AI and when not to use it. Leveraging the fact that people's behaviors and opinions and emotions come into play here. And then, as I mentioned, from here you can then direct them to the appropriate program that they qualify for. Rather than them going to a menu of a dozen different things that they might qualify for. You have that design and behavioral science principles of choice. If you give customers too many choices, they kind of freeze up and can't make a choice, and then you just drop them off. So it's really important to be targeted and specific and drive them to the most likely eligible program that they can participate in. And this is true for whether it's a limited income program, or whether it's a demand response program or energy efficiency program. These are the type of concepts that you want to keep in mind. So we talked about a little bit AI in the intersection with behavioral science. I'm going to pass it to Natalie to talk about putting this into practice with user-centered design.
Thanks, Jamie. So I am going to walk you through a design-led initiative to show how consulting design services can help define the problem space and facilitate working together toward a shared vision of a solution. It all starts with human-centered design. At Oracle, our design activities follow the Redwood design process. And from this table, hopefully you can read it all right, you'll see that discovery and clarity of purpose take up a full third of the page. It's critical to do research and make sure that we're solving the right problem before we spend a lot of energy designing and developing products and solutions. In a nutshell, upstream clarity reduces downstream risk. So the project that we're going to walk through is a 16-week design sprint, and it goes through, I'd say, around step 3.5. And we're developing a shared vision implementation plan, but stopping short of development for the scope of this initiative. So during the discovery phase, we curated and facilitated a series of human-centered design activities. The purpose of the activities was to unpack and prioritize our various stakeholders' ideas, issues, and initiatives. Then we worked together to generate stakeholder maps. From these maps, we identified that within the utility, there were many different groups and blockers to the project. For example, we needed to liaise with marketing, with legal, with procurement. So it really helped to discuss all these stakeholders with the utilities and identify who could act as an influencer for the various groups. There were also state level regulators that needed to be influenced and communicated to, as well as other partner utilities within the state. So what you're seeing on the screen now is a session that we ran to really work together to align on our North Star for the project. We asked the group of stakeholders, why are we here? What are we doing? We worked together to draft and iterate on a vision statement that everybody voted on and aligned to. So the prompt that we asked was, in your own words, what constitutes decarbonization? And the output of that, which I'll read here, is to deliver a comprehensive, streamlined customer experience that promotes, educates, and simplifies residential customer planning and adoption of decarbonization solutions. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but it was important to make sure that everybody agreed and aligned to all the key points and that it was comprehensive. So we wrote it and edited and then critiqued as a group. And we've often referred back to this vision statement when we start each iteration of the workflow. And it's very helpful to make sure we all are working together toward a common goal. So after we had the vision statement drafted and agreed to, we came up with some design pillars to guide our design work. And remember, at this phase, we're still in the clarity of purpose. We're a couple weeks into the project now, and we haven't even, pushed a pixel in Figma or picked up a pencil to sketch what the actual solution would be like. We're still aligning on the vision and the principles. So things we came up with for this decarbonization hub was to simplify, make sure that the journey and the experience is very easy for the customer, put them first, and really just try not to overwhelm them with information and programs, and reveal only what they need to know at that moment in time. And second, we wanted to guide people on their journey and also educate and prepare them on, what they could expect next. Some of the programs and adoption activities that we were asking them to make are quite complex. For example, installing a heat pump in your home. You first have to weatherize and do other steps that we wanted to really just make sure that people were aware of before they decided on how to proceed. And of course, reduce friction. We wanted to make it easy. And then when we ask the customer for data, which can be sensitive, as Jamie had mentioned specifically to the LMI audience, we wanted to make sure that people knew why we were asking and could understand that the reason that we were asking was so that we could provide value to them and give them recommendations that are tailored to their experience. So what you see here is the 5 E's framework for experience design. So we use this framework to really make sure that we were thinking about the experience, not just when the customers are receiving an email, a prompt, or engaging with the web experience, but also how does that interact with all of the other elements that they encounter within their environment. So the 5 stages are entice. How do you get people to even become aware of the experience or want to enter? This enter might seem simple, but our research has shown us that there is a lot of friction with users just trying to onboard and get oriented with an experience. I think we can all, share the frustration of logging in and passwords and credentials and 2-factor authentication. Really just even getting to the login part of an experience can be a blocker. So we wanted to make sure the team is thinking through that phase. And then engage, this is the actual experience when you're doing the things. Exit is when you've accomplished what your goal was for that web session. And then extend. For a solution like a hub where we want people to take many different actions and adopt different technologies and take advantage of all the programs that are available to them, extend becomes really important because we want them to keep coming back to the experience. And how do we prompt them to re-enter without overwhelming them with messaging? Okay. So what you're seeing on the slide here is mapping back to how do we make sure that customers are mapped to the experience that's most appropriate for them. So the project that I'm describing is a residential decarbonization hub that for phase 1 is relevant really only to homeowners, residential homeowners who would not, who own their home and are not businesses, and they also are not in need of bill assistance. So the first step of the experience really is to apply a filter, a frictionless filter in the form of a survey that asks only the minimum amount of information of the recipient, with questions that are written in an empathetic way and in a way that would not make the customers feel defensive. And the purpose of the survey is to divert them to experiences that are really the best fit for them. So as you can see from this flow chart, we're asking these questions to get people out of the experience and then making sure that the people participating in the decarbonization hub are the people that are going to be most likely to benefit from those programs. And you'll see that little square on the bottom right on the screen are the people that we want to end up with at the experience. And these next few slides, I'm going to walk you through a couple screens of the experience. It's quite in depth, but I think these will illustrate for you the key components of the solution that we're proposing. So these are low fidelity wireframes that we're looking at. They're really just to show the mechanics of the solution and the key components. And then after this phase, we will provide to our utility partner high fidelity mockups, which they can then use to further influence within their home state and with partner utilities. So the first element that you'll notice is this house graphic. And we really felt it was important to show the electrification and weatherization activities that would drive the outcome of decarbonization in the context that would be most helpful for the customer. So it was important to show their home. Like, we have a cutaway, they can browse around and kind of click different areas of the home that they're interested in exploring, but then also really just take those technologies and make them less abstract and more paint a clear picture for them. And then we have a how can we help you button. I'm not sure if you can read it, but it's this black button right in the middle. And that button launches like hand-holding prompts, kind of conversational questions that are used to gather more data from the customer that will drive the personalized experience. And, you know, like we did during the filtering survey to even get the customer to the experience, we're only asking enough information to route and to the right programs. But since they're in the experience, they're logged in, we definitely want to learn as much as we can about their specific home situation so that we can match them up to the right things. And then when we talk about matching them to the right things, the right initiatives, programs, incentives, rebates, whatever they are, those will populate in the personalized plan, which you see below the house graphic. So each project within the plan is going to appear in the logical order that it makes sense to do the project. So for example, I touched a little bit on weatherization and heat pump adoption. You'll notice that weatherization is stacked first because it would make sense to double check your insulation and all of your sealant areas in your house before you go down the path of trying to get a heat pump installed and take advantage of the large incentives that are available. And again, I'm skipping around a little bit with this experience, but just to illustrate, the person in this flow has just finished their weatherization journey. And then they received an email that lets them know that they finished the journey. They've earned a little badge, and then now they're prompted to re-enter to start their heat pump project. So remember, when the 5 E's were on the screen, we were talking about the importance of making the experience a full circle, right? Like, okay, I'm done weatherizing. How do I get back to do the next thing? And the mechanism that we use is outbound email and the achievement badges. And if you recall the design pillars, one of the pillars was tracking the journey, making sure that people understand where they're at. So the way that we've solved for that in the design is with these milestone tracking line kind of journey map charts that you'll see at the bottom of each project. And if you look over to the personalized plan, right below that, you'll see the project tracker status, where our customer can keep track of the projects that they've already completed, and then also have a quick visual into, you know, how many steps are there for each of their upcoming projects. And that is our decarbonization hub in a nutshell.
Thank you, Natalie. It was great to go through how we think about user-centered design and how we put some of these principles in practice. And just for the audience here too, this was from a ground up design process. It's not a product, right? At least not yet. This is something that we're working on based on a request from one of our utility partners that had this problem to solve, and we could leverage our design team and these principles, as well as some of the AI and behavioral science, to put together some concepts. So appreciate, Natalie, you running through that case study, and we look forward to doing that again. I would love to do similar projects with other utilities, and to whether it's that particular journey or a totally different type of journey, and looking forward to solving those challenges in this industry. So appreciate it. I'll pass it back to
Jamie.
Electricity Canada. Thanks.
Thank you both, Jamie and Natalie. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, feel free to put them into the chat. Just something on my mind as we move through to 2050, 2035, and 2050, the energy transition will require, all technologies that are available, ones that we know today and ones that we don't know about. So this, leveraging AI is certainly an important piece of that, a piece of achieving net zero by 2050 and bringing the customers along that journey. So you're developing this for a current utility at the moment, Jamie, you had said?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we have our customer engagement platform, deployed at nearly 100 utilities in North America, and that certainly has a lot of capabilities out of the box. But there's this transition is fast. This transition requires us to move at a much faster pace, and we can leverage these design principles to quickly iterate on new capabilities, new functionality that's maybe not a mature product yet. And but that's what this transition needs, right? Is the ability to move very, very quickly.
Right. And so obviously data is the key piece to all of this, right? You had mentioned using billing data, using metering data, leveraging other sources of data that the utility has to feed into the AI model. Any sort of, what are the challenges around that? Like when I talk to my members, that is quite a significant challenge in that, having clean data, knowing that the data is yeah, I would say the clean part is really important. So any sort of insights there? for those utilities on the line?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You know, data is super important, and getting clean data and data that can match up, right? So there's a big talk about ontologies. You know, the definitions of things. You know, what is a customer? What is a billing period? What is a month? You know, what does even last month mean? Is it the last 30 days? Is the last billing cycle? You know, you have to align all these different concepts, and the data is dirty. You know, it's incomplete. And so, one part of it is making sure you have the right infrastructure in place, right? You need to be able to move data around easily. You need to be able to store data easily. So that's just sort of a fundamental piece of this. And cloud technologies will make that much easier, of course, because you can quickly expand and right size what you need in order to accomplish goals. But the other aspect of it is that there's a level of goodness rather than perfection that's necessary to actually drive outcomes. So, go back to what I talked about in terms of the AI models, right? Those AI models might be 97% accurate, or 86% accurate, and maybe that's good enough, in order to actually, once you leverage the user design principles, which, incorporate behavioral science, you can, does it really matter that you're at 100% versus 97%? And, as I, again, mentioned before, you could have 100% perfect data. You could have the science behind you. You could have the facts at your disposal, but that doesn't necessarily mean customer action. You need to leverage some of these other concepts. So you need to have the right technology, obviously, but you need to put in practice the fact that good is sometimes better than perfection.
Right, that's a really good point. Isn't there a saying that perfection is the evil of good, or something like that?
Exactly.
That would apply to this case. So you had mentioned fundamentals. So for some of our members, perhaps they have to work on the fundamentals before they move to this step in terms of leveraging AI. So what do you have some of those fundamentals that you can point out?
Well, most utilities have actually the fundamentals in place. Utilities have a pretty good understanding of their network. Maybe not all the AMI meters in place across Canada quite yet, but there's still a lot of data that you have, a lot of billing information that you have. You certainly have a lot of customer infrastructure in place. You've got typically web portals. You've got the ability to send outbound communications. So you kind of have you have your data strategies usually set up, whether they're on premise or in the cloud. So there's a lot of data that's available. There's a lot of infrastructure in place, and I think the main part that we see, and probably this is where my bias comes in, but really have to have the right partners who invested in their own infrastructure, their own R&D dollars, their own risk, right, to try these things in the market. And typically, like the way we operate is we don't require a lot of interconnectivity to the platforms that are in place. We only need to get as much data as necessary in order to achieve an outcome. And that's the other analogy is don't boil the ocean, right? You have specific targets, you have specific objectives over the next few years of what you want to accomplish. You take them one at a time, and you build out in a way that is sensible, and leveraging your partner network, leveraging your trusted advisors to help you with that.
That's a very good point, because we will not be able to do it alone. We'll have to do it in collaboration with others within this industry, within an ecosystem, with other industries as well. It will take a monumental collaborative effort to get there. So that's a very good point. So the fundamentals are there largely, even if you don't have AMI. Cloud, if people aren't on the cloud, that's okay, or if they're moving to the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, the cloud is important part of this. If you look at the survey across global utilities, the majority, high percentage, have strategies to leverage the cloud. It does give you that ability to move so much faster, and particularly with the traditional concern had been around cybersecurity, but it's been clearly demonstrated now for many years that it's very difficult to keep up with cybersecurity. And it's nice to have the Amazons and the Microsofts and the Oracles of the world to invest their dollars and capital on keeping that up to date. And it turns out it's much easier for us to do it and our companies like us than it is for every individual business to try to keep up. So and that's including utilities. And so that's one aspect of how do you accelerate, leverage the best-in-class technologies and capabilities and resources at your disposal, and that's including cloud. But not everything has to be cloud. It's not a one or the other thing, right? You put certain things in the cloud and you don't put certain other things in the cloud.
That's a good point. The security aspect of it. Yeah, very good point. Well, thank you very much, Jamie and Natalie. I want to thank you for your time today. I want to remind people on this webinar that this was part one of a two-part series that Oracle will be presenting on. The next one is on Thursday, September 28th, and it's on why DERMS must span both sides of the meter. So you can see all of our future events and webinars on in our monthly newsletter, Current Affairs, or you can go to the events section of our website, electricity.ca. And in closing, I would like to thank you again, Jamie and Natalie, for your time today. It was a really good discussion, a lot of food for thought for our members on the line. And I want to wish everybody a wonderful rest of your work week. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care.